Hi everyone, this is Rob Burris. I'm a research fellow in psychology at the University of Northumbria, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to Qualtrics. I'm going to take you from an absolute beginner in Qualtrics to someone who's able to set up and run your own web surveys, your own web experiments, all the way through to collecting and downloading the data. So this video is primarily meant for third year psychology undergrads at Northumbria. It's meant as a sort of recap of the lecture that I gave earlier this week. If you were at the lecture and you thought it was so brilliant, you couldn't wait to see it again, you're in luck, because I'm going to go through the whole thing again here. If you should have been at that lecture but you couldn't drag yourself out of bed at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday, then I forgive you, you're here now, so let's start learning. If you're not a Northumbria student, then don't worry, this thing is for you as well. There's just a bit of housekeeping I've got to do for the Northumbria students for about a minute before we get going, but other than that, it's suitable for everyone. So if you're not a Northumbria student, brilliant, you've managed to get an hour of free education out of me, so hop on board. Okay. For the Northumbria students, the first thing you're going to need to do is go and get your username and password from your project supervisor. They'll set you up with that. You can come along and log in. Also, another thing you might be wondering if you're a Northumbria student is why we're not using SurveyMonkey anymore to do our data collection online. We've got rid of SurveyMonkey at Northumbria and we're just using Qualtrics now. So that's a bit of a pain. You know, you've learned how to use SurveyMonkey and now we've just pulled the rug out from under your feet, but Qualtrics will appear very familiar to you if you already know how to use SurveyMonkey. So it's not completely different, but it's a lot better than SurveyMonkey. So we've kind of upgraded. We've got a better piece of software here. So yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we've changed. Right, so we'll log in and we'll get started. Now, if you've already got experiments set up on Qualtrics, you'll see this list of experiments when you log in under the My Surveys tab. Okay, so you've got the My Surveys tab selected. This is what you'll see. I'm just going to delete this survey here because I'm going to recreate it to show you this demonstration. If you haven't got any surveys already set up, then Qualtrics might send you straight through to the Create Survey tab, but if it hasn't, click on that now and you'll see these options. Alright, we'll click on Quick Survey Builder and we'll build a survey from scratch. I'm going to call this Face Study. We're going to make an experiment here that's a facial attractiveness study. That's the kind of thing I normally do in my day job, is I research human mate preferences. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to make an experiment into human mate preferences. And, you know, even if you're not doing a study on human mate preferences, you should be, but if you're not, okay. We're going to go through all the different item types and all the different question types, and so this will be useful to everyone who's making any kind of survey on Qualtrics. Okay, now what's the experiment that I'm going to set up? Well, it's a simple study. We're going to find out who's more attractive, Ryan Gosling or Robert Pattinson. Simple. Now the right answer is, of course, Ryan Gosling. I mean, look at the guy. He's like concentrated sunbeams with a beard as well, so it's like super perfect. I asked the class the other day to vote, to give a show of hands who they thought was more attractive, Gosling or Pattinson, and I thought it would be a 50-50 thing at least, but it was like everyone voted for Gosling. I may have been guilty slightly of nudging them towards the correct decision, but I genuinely thought more people would go for Pato, but I think it's possibly because nobody wants to appear like an absolute twihard in front of all their cool university friends, so maybe more people would have voted for Pattinson if they were being 100% honest. But anyway, so we're going to give people the option of choosing which face they find more attractive, Gosling or Pattinson. And what we're also going to do is see if people's propensity for morningness or eveningness personality affects their preferences. So If you haven't heard of this idea before, there's this theory that some people are better suited naturally to working first thing in the morning, and some people work better in the evening. So we call them morning larks or night owls. And it's not just about working patterns. It's also morningness, eveningness also affects our mate preferences. So we know that people who are night owls are more predisposed to seek short-term relationships. They're more interested in one-night stands, whereas people who are bright, up and early, first thing in the morning, ready to go, they tend to be more willing to commit to long-term relationships. So maybe we might predict that people who are morning people have a stronger preference for Ryan Gosling, and people who are evening persons might prefer the vampiric Robert Pattinson. Anyway, it's a theory. Let's run with it. Okay, let's get started. When you create a new survey in Qualtrics, the first thing you're going to see is this page. There's loads of different options, and most of them you don't have to worry about too much. First thing you've got here is the face study, name of the study, so you can click on that and you can change it if you want. And you've got the default question block here as well. So all the questions in a Qualtrics survey are put into blocks, and it's possible to put every single question in your survey into one block, but as we go through you'll see it makes sense for various reasons to split things into multiple blocks. Alright, so our first block, the first thing we show our participants is going to be an information sheet. You can call these blocks whatever you want. The participant won't see the names of the blocks, so whatever is useful for you to know what you're doing. Okay, so information sheet. I'll create a new item, and an item is just what Qualtrics calls a question. So we'll click on that, and by default, the first item we get is a multiple choice question. And you'll have also noticed on the right hand side of the screen here we get all these options that pop up. So when you select an item, you'll get the options on the right here that refer just to that one item. So it's set up as a multiple choice item. I'll click on that drop down there, and I'm going to change it to a descriptive text item. You've got all these different types of item that it can be. We'll choose descriptive text, and into the descriptive text box I'll click on that, and I'm just going to paste in my information sheet from this notepad document here. Control C to copy that, and then just Control V to paste it. You'll notice there's no paste button here like there is in Word, so if you want to paste that in, you'll have to use the shortcut Control V. And you've also got this rich content editor if you want to add formatting or anything like that to the text. Okay, if you click away, then that's automatically saved in there. You'll see here next to the title of the survey, Qualtrics lets you know the last time it saved the survey, and it'll keep doing that automatically as you progress. But if you're like me and you get paranoid that Qualtrics is going to crash or something, you can just hit Control S and that will save your progress. Okay, now I want to ask my participants some demographic questions, their sex, their age, that kind of thing. And I want this to appear on the next page. Okay, so to make something appear on a new page in Qualtrics, you add it to a new block. And it's also sensible to keep things in a new block if they're thematically different, so our information sheet is sort of different to our demographics questions. That's when the survey really begins. So it makes sense to keep it in a separate block. Now the way to add a new block is to click on this link right down here. You see it, it's tiny. You've got this huge create a new item button, but the option to add a new block is tiny, but there it is. We'll click on that, we'll get a new block. And I'll change the name of this to demographics. Okay, and I'll create a new item, and the first question I want to ask my participants is how old they are. So how old are you in years? And of course this isn't a multiple choice question, right? So I'm going to change the item type from multiple choice to text entry. Click on that, and now there's a text box for people to write their age, whatever that is, Now what I also like to do when I'm asking people to give me their age is make sure they don't, because some people do this, right? They'll type their age in letters. Some people do that, and then when you process your data, you've got all these nice numbers, and then just someone's put their age in letters, and it's a pain. You don't want that. It makes it harder to process your data. So if you want to force people to answer in a certain way, you can add content validation to your item. So you can see on the right here, we've got validation type, different types of validation. You can set maximum lengths or minimum lengths, and you can set content validation. So I'll click on that. By default, it's set up to be an email address. So if you want to collect someone's email address and you want to make sure they do put an email address in there, you can set up this. I'm going to change it to number. So now if someone answers using letters, Qualtrics will stop them and make them answer in numbers. And you can see here we've got this red box which indicates we've set up content validation for this question. Okay, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make this question a forced response question. So you see here we've got this validation options checkbox here. I'm going to click on that, and now Qualtrics won't let participants pass on through the survey until they've answered this question. You can also change this to request response, which will allow people to progress through the survey, but it'll remind them to answer the question if they've left it blank. And if they want to leave it blank after that, then they can carry on. Okay, the next thing I want to ask people is what their sex is. So what is your sex? And because this is quite a common question, Qualtrics recognizes it and it knows the correct answers are male and female. So it's put those in ready for you. Now, because we're not a bunch of massive sexists, we don't necessarily want male to appear before female every single time a participant comes along to take part in the study. It makes much more sense for these to be presented in a random order, I think, anyway. So to make them appear in a random order, we'll set up randomization for this item. And to do that, we click on the cog to the left-hand side of the item here and choose randomization. Okay, we can randomize the order of all choices, click to close, and you can see we've got this grey box here with these crisscrossing arrows. That means we've set up randomization for this item. And now if we scroll back up to the top of the page, click the button for preview survey, then Qualtrics will open up the survey and we can run through it as if we were a participant. So we'll see the information sheet here, we'll click to start, we can say how old we are, and if we try and say it in letters, okay, that's not English, but just imagine it is. If we try and progress, it'll make us add a valid number. So we have to put our age in numbers. And you'll see it's asking our sex, and the options are male and female. And if we refresh this page, we'll see that half the time participants are asked, well, not half the time, but on a random basis, they'll be asked, they'll be given the choices female, male, or male, female. Okay. Oh, and also this address here for the survey preview. If you want to show your survey to someone else, like a collaborator or your research supervisor, you can copy this link and send it to them, and they can preview your survey before it goes live. All right. What you can also do is you can preview just a single block rather than previewing the whole survey. And this is obviously going to be more useful the further on we get into the survey and the survey becomes longer. So you can click on block options here on the right for your block, and you can view block, and that will allow you to preview just that one block. Okay, right, we'll add a new item. And now, because it's a facial attractiveness study, it's important to know the sexual orientation of the participants. So I'm going to ask them, do you identify as? And Qualtrics thinks for some reason this is a yes or no question. It's not, so we're going to have to change the options. I'll change them to heterosexual or straight, gay or lesbian, and we need a third option for bisexual, so I'll go over onto the options here on the right and I'll change the number of choices to 3. And now I can add bisexual. Okay. I'll create a new item. Now, the last two questions in my demographics block, I want to be about the participant's relationship. So the first one I'm going to ask is, what is your relationship status? Okay, and the options will be partnered and single. Single. Okay, we don't need a third option, so I will hit the subtract button to get rid of that. And the final question I'm going to ask is, how long have you been in this relationship? Okay, now when I ask people about their relationship length, what I normally like to do is give them the option of responding in both months and years, because it depends how long the relationship's been. Sometimes it's easier to answer in months, sometimes easier in years. So the question type I need for this item is, again, a text entry type, but I want to give people more than one box, more than one text box. So what I'll do is I'll hover over the drop down here for text entry, and I get different types of item type based on the one I've got selected here. So these aren't all the item types you've got available to you. If you hover over them, you've got more options. Okay, so I'll choose form. Change the first one to years, second one to months. And by the way, I'm using the tab key to get between these choices rather than using my mouse, so that's a bit easier, a bit quicker. I'll hit the minus button again to get rid of the third option. And now our participants can answer this question with box for years, box for months. Okay. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that this question's only relevant to people if they've answered to the previous question that they're partnered. Okay, so if they're single, this question doesn't make any sense. They're not in a relationship. They can't answer it. So what would be ideal is if we could skip this question for the participants it's not relevant for. And we can do that in a couple of ways. So the first way we can do it is by selecting the question and choosing Add Display Logic. And when we do that, we get this dialog box, and we can set up some options for when this question should be displayed. So we will select the question, what is your relationship status? And if people have chosen partnered, if that's selected, then we want this question to be displayed. So once you've confirmed that, you'll see we've got this blue box. If what is your relationship status partnered is selected, then this question will be displayed. Okay. Another way we can get this same effect is by choosing the question that's going to decide whether the later question is displayed or not, and add skip logic at this point. All right, so now we can say if single is selected, then skip to the end of the block. Okay, because this is the last question in the block. So these two options will do the same thing. So in this instance, it doesn't matter which one we use, skip logic or display logic, but when you make your survey, maybe it'll make more sense to use one or the other. Sometimes one option is the only one that works for us. So let's say, for example, we had more questions in this block and we wanted every one of our participants to answer them, whether they were single or partnered. Obviously, this skip logic wouldn't be suitable then, because it's shunting all the single people to the end of the block and they would miss those relevant questions then. Anyway, in this instance, either of them works. And I usually use display logic if both of them work. Okay, that's the end of that block. Now we'll add a block which will contain our morningness, eveningness questions. All right, and this will just be a way for me to show you how to create a few different item types and set them up how you want them to be set up. So the first question I'll ask is, if you had a free choice of when to get up in the morning, what time of day would you choose? So if you had a free choice of wake up times, which would you choose? Okay, there's probably a better way to ask that question, but anyway, that'll do for now. Now I want to give people a choice of responding for any time of the day they would like to get up, in 15-minute increments. So starting from midnight, then going through 1:15 midnight, half midnight, 12:45, 1 in the morning, 1:15, all the way through the day. Now obviously this is going to be loads of choices. It's going to be about 100 choices, so we don't want to do it in this multiple choice format with the radio buttons, because it'll just go right off the bottom of the page and people will have to scroll through and it'll just look a mess. So we'll change the item type to drop down list. Okay, so if you hover over multiple choice, you'll see their drop down list. And now we can click to edit the choices, and we can change this to midnight, 12:15, 12:30, and okay, we've run out of options, so now we have to hit the plus button, and Qualtrics is filling them in based on some weird mathematical rules I don't really understand, but okay, 1:45, 1 in the morning, and as you can see, this is going to get super tedious extremely fast. There's got to be a quicker way of doing this, and there is. So what you want to do is click edit multiple, and that gives us this fly out text box, and now we can just type in without having to click or press our tab key or whatever. We can just go 1:15 and 1:30 and put our options on a new line, and then they'll appear how we want them to. Now what I've done is I've prepared all the times a day earlier in a notepad document, so I can just bring them in here and paste them in, hit done, and then we've got all our options ready to go. Now at the moment they're not appearing as a drop down menu, but if we refresh this page then when we come back down to the morningness eveningness block, I'll just minimize these two blocks here, you'll see we've got our drop down with all the options, all the different times a day in there. The next question I want to add is a similar question. Now I want to ask people not when they would prefer to wake up, but when they'd rather go to bed. And it's a similar question, so I don't want to have to make that same question from scratch. So what I'll do is I'll select that question and I'll choose copy question from over here, and now we get the same question again, and I can just change wake up to bedtimes. If you had a free choice of bedtimes, which would you choose? Okay, and the last question that I'm going to put in my morningness eveningness questionnaire is oh sorry, I didn't mean to make a new block, I'll just delete that. Meant to just add a new item. The last question I'm going to ask is how tired or how alert people feel at different times of the day. Okay, so how tired or alert do you feel at these times? And the options I'm going to give people are going to appear in a matrix table. So this is a really useful question type that you'll have come across before. So all I'm going to do is type 9 a.m. here, noon, 9 p.m. and then people for each of these times can say they feel tired, neither tired nor alert, or alert. Okay, now they can choose just one of these options for every time. And you can add, as before, you can just come up here and add more statements, or you can add more scale points if you want to. Okay, so that's the end of that block. Now I'm going to start presenting the participants with the faces, but before I do that, what I like to do is make a new block that just is an information block that just tells people that they're about to do a different kind of task. So anytime you move someone from doing, say, a bunch of questions to rating faces, it's nice to give them a bit of an orientation so they know where they are and they know what's coming up. So I'll just change this to face info, this name of this block, create a new item, I'll set it to descriptive text, and I'll just rate, you will rate some faces for attractiveness on the next page, okay, or something like that. Okay, and now I'll add a new block. I'll call this male faces, and I'll create a new item. So what I want to show people in the face rating block is I want to show them a photograph of Ryan Gosling next to a photograph of Robert Pattinson, and I want them to choose which one of the two they find more attractive. So it is still a multiple choice question, just a multiple choice question with images. All right, so I just want 2 images, just a face pair. So I will change the number of choices to 2. And then I'll go into my item type drop down here. I'll hover over multiple choice and I will select single answer horizontal graphic. As you can see, as you hover over each of these, it shows you what the item is going to look like, which is quite handy. So this is what we want the question to look like. I'll select that. And then if I click on my first choice, I can see this blue drop down menu thing here. So if I click on this, I can choose to insert a graphic. I can also choose to use the rich content editor. That just is what you would select if you wanted to add a YouTube video, or maybe you've uploaded an audio file for people to rate. That's what you would do. So I'm not going to go into that here, but if that's what you want to do, then you can look that up, rich content editor. I'll just choose insert graphic. And this opens a dialog box which shows us our image library. So in Qualtrics, you've got 2 different types of library. You've got the Qualtrics library, which is just the all the images that Qualtrics gives you to play with, and you might find some of these useful. And you've got your own image library. So these are the images that I've already got saved to my library in Qualtrics. Obviously, when you first open this, it's going to be empty. So we'll just assume it's empty now. I'll choose to upload a new graphic. I'll choose a file to upload. I'll choose this first picture of the Gaza, and Qualtrics will upload it. Now, what you're going to want to do before you upload your images to Qualtrics is make sure they're the right size. So I've already made sure this image is 360 by 480, which is going to be pretty good for most screens. You can't fiddle with any of the image size settings in Qualtrics as far as I know. So you'll want to either go into Photoshop and get them how you want them. If you haven't got Photoshop, you can just go to pixlr.com, open the image editor, and this just works just like Photoshop. So you just open an image and then you can set the image size for what you want it to be. When you save the image, you can adjust the quality so that the file size isn't too large. So you're going to want to make sure the file size is not huge, because then it will take a long time for your experiment to load up, and the longer it takes, the more chance there is that your participants are just going to get bored and ditch your study entirely. So you want to avoid that by reaching a good compromise between image quality and image size. Okay, so that's Pixlr. We'll go back to Qualtrics. This is fine. I'll hit save, and that saves into my image library. And I don't want this text to appear above his photograph here, so I'll just click in there and delete it. The image vanishes for a second, but as soon as you click out, then the image will come back. Alright, I'll add now a picture of Pattinson. I'll insert a graphic again. I'll go to upload a new graphic, choose a file, and choose this one. But now, as you can see, right, I can't select more than one image. So if you've got loads of images you need to upload into your graphics library, doing it this way is going to take a long time. So what you might want to do is cancel out of these options. Scroll to the top of the screen here. Go to Library. And this will open this will open your library overview. Okay, so you can have a library of surveys, a library of questions. You can add blocks to your library, which I'll show you later, and you've got your graphics library as well. So I'll just click on my graphics library button here and open up the library, and I've got my images in my different categories, my actresses, my actors, and I've got this Gosling picture that I've already uploaded. Now if you're in Chrome like I am, if you're using Google Chrome, then you can just bring over your images in Windows Explorer, and you can just drag them in and drop them into whichever category you want to. If you're working with Internet Explorer like an absolute Neanderthal, then this isn't going to work in the current version of Explorer. So there you go, just move to a proper browser is the only advice I can give you. Okay, we've done that now, they're uploaded. We can go back to the Edit Survey tab. Scroll back down to my Male Faces block, And now I can add my picture of Pattinson, which is down here in the unassigned category of my graphics library. Again, I'll get rid of the text. And now what I want to do is, as with the gender question earlier, I want to add item randomization, because we know from previous research that when humans are presented a visual stimulus which has a left and a right side, they're more likely to attend to the left side. Okay, so just by chance, Gosling is going to get chosen more often than Pattinson because he's on the left-hand side. I mean, he's going to get chosen more often anyway because he's gorgeous. But we want to avoid this side bias thing. So we'll randomize using the same options as before. Click on the cog, choose randomization, randomize the order of all choices, close that out. We get the little box here showing us we've turned on randomization. And now when we click on block options and view this block, then we'll see that half the time Gosling's going to come on the right and half the time on the left. Okay. You can see also that we've got this little orange box here, and what that does is that indicates that this question has mobile compatibility issues. It might not work as you expect on a mobile device, and that's going to be increasingly an issue as more and more people move from using laptops and desktops to iPads and mobile phones. So you might want to worry about that. I'm not too worried here. I've checked it on a mobile device. It seems to work fine, and it's more important to me that I get this side bias thing covered and that the images are randomized. So I've decided to go with the randomization rather than worrying about this compatibility issue. But you might want to check on a mobile device and see your study actually works if you get any of these alerts. Okay, so that's one face pair. I want to... Oh, first thing I should do is change the question text is to which of these images is more attractive. Okay, this is the first face pair. I want there to be 3 face pairs in this block. So I will copy this question. I'll click on the image using the right or left button on your mouse, doesn't matter, and choose Edit Graphic. And I'll choose the second image of Gosling here. Same thing for Pattinson. I'll copy this question and I'll put in my last image of Gozzo. Last image of the Pat Lord. And there we go. All right. So now when we preview this block, go back up to block options, view the block, we'll see that all these 3 pairs of images, they're appearing in on the same page, and we don't want that. We'd rather they appeared on separate page. Oh, see, I've put the same image here, so I'll fix that in a second. But anyway, we want them all to appear on different pages, because that way people aren't going to have to scroll down through the images when they get to this page, and that makes it a bit easier for them. And it also means that they won't be influenced by the previous face pair when they're rating the next one, so I think you probably get more believable results or whatever. So anyway, we want these all to be on separate pages. And what I also want is the order that the images appear in, the image pairs appearing, to be randomized. So I don't want this to always be the first face pair that's rated, this one to always be the second, and this one to always be the third. So we can fix that. First of all, I'll change this graphic and put in the proper one here. Okay, so one thing we can do to put these face pairs on each on a separate page is we can add. We could put them in separate blocks, right? We know already that different blocks appear on different pages, so we could put them in different blocks. I don't want to do that because it's best to keep thematically similar questions in the same block, so I want to avoid that. What you can do is you can add a page break between the different questions. So select an item, add a page break, and you'll get this page break beneath it. And now when we preview this block, you'll see the first question is on one page and the other 2 questions are on another page. Okay. So that's pretty good. We can do that. And now what I want to do is randomize, like I said, the order that these faces appear in. So to randomize items within a block, you would click on the block options and choose question randomization. And we can randomize the order of all questions and close that out. So it looks the same as the item randomization, but now we're like the choice randomization, but now we're randomizing inside this whole block. All right, we'll close that. And again, we'll preview the block. Okay, so now the questions are coming in a random order. So this one that was the first is now the third for this participant. But you'll notice that it's all on one page again, so our page break isn't working. If we go back to Qualtrics and scroll back down to the face block, if we open this up and we open question randomization, you'll notice on the bottom here we've got the small print here that says enabling question randomization will ignore page breaks and skip logic and so forth. So turning the randomization on has made this page break useless. So we need to find a different way of putting these questions on separate pages. And the way we can do that is choosing advanced randomization. So we'll click on that. That'll open up the advanced randomization dialog. One thing I should mention before we carry on is that occasionally that link doesn't work and I have to refresh the survey to make it work. So anytime an option doesn't work in Qualtrics, or you're not getting the result that you think you should be getting, just try refreshing the survey and then seeing if it works, and 9 times out of 10 that does fix the problem. Okay, so on the left here we've got our items, our questions, our face pairs. I'll select them all with using the shift key and clicking on them. I'll move them over to the randomized questions box, and now these questions will be randomized, and if we choose to show one question on each page, now we'll get exactly what we want. All right, one thing I should show you before we carry on is this random subset box. So we could also move all the items in here, and we could choose to only show our participant a subset of all of the questions. So for this particular experiment, I want to show everyone all 3 image pairs, but there might be instances where you only want to show each participant a random subset of your trial. So say for example, a few years ago I was running a facial attractiveness study and I had 700 or so faces that I needed to get rated. It was ridiculous. Anyway, I didn't want every participant to have to plow through 700 faces. That is a ludicrous ask. So I only wanted them to rate maybe 30 or 40 faces. But the software I was using at the time wouldn't allow me to present a random subset. I had to set up like 30 different experiments, similar experiments, and each had a different set of images in there, a different set of 30 images. And so it took me ages to set up all these different experiments, and as you can imagine, the data when it came through at the end was just a huge mess, so difficult to deal with. And if I'd had the option then of using Qualtrics and being able to just chuck all the questions in this random subset option and just saying, right, 30 out of this 700, that would have saved me so much time. So that's a really useful option. Okay, well, we'll just leave these settings as they are now, hit save and close. Oh, actually, was that properly selected? Let me just go back in there. Question randomization. Yeah, okay, advanced randomization, that's on. And we can get rid of this page break now. We don't need it, it's not doing anything. We can just click the red minus box here and that'll get rid of that page break. You can see here underneath the title of the block, we've got this randomized questions box. So now we know that we've got randomization within each item here and also within the block. The last block that we're going to add to the survey is the debrief sheet. So we need to tell our participants what the experiment was about and explain who they can contact if they've been distressed by the study or whatever. So again, I will go and open my debrief text. I'll copy it. I'll come in here. I'll create a new item. I'll make it descriptive text. I'll paste that in, and we're all done. Okay, well, what I also want to do is add another face rating block. I've got faces of male actors here, but I would like to add another block that's got some female actors in here too. So as before, when we copied questions, when we're going to have some similar question, we could copy that question. We can do the same thing for the block. So if you select the block options and choose to copy the block, then we can rename the block. I'll call this female faces. And then the page will refresh. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we see we've got our new block, same as the male faces, but now it's called female faces. And what you'll also notice here is that, see, it's come up at the very bottom of the survey beneath the debrief. So when you copy an item, then it appears directly under the item that you've copied. But when you copy a block, it'll always go to the bottom of your survey. So if you're aware of that, you can know that it's worked. If you copy a block near the top of your survey, and it is there, it's at the bottom. So I want to move this block above the debrief. I'll click on block options and choose to move the block up. Page will refresh again, and then when you go back down to the bottom of your survey, you'll see we've got the male faces, now the female faces, and the debrief at the bottom. Right, now what I could do is just go through all these images in my female block and change them all to the pictures I've got saved in my image library of female actors. But to save time, what I'll do is I'll just import the block, because I've already made that block. I've saved the block to my block library, which you can do by going to your block options and choosing copy block to library. So I don't need to make that block from scratch. I can just import it. So I'll delete this block here. I don't need it. This female faces block. I'll go down to the bottom. I'll choose to copy items from. At the bottom of every block, you'll have this option to copy items from. And then it'll open this dialog, and you can see we've got our libraries. I'll go into my own library. I'll go into my block library. I've got a category within my block library, which is just for this particular study. And you can see I've saved all of the blocks that are in this survey to my library. I want my female faces block, so I'll click on that. Qualtrics will show me a preview of what that block looks like, and I can choose to import the whole block. Again, that'll come on the bottom. I can move that block up so it's in the right place. And when I scroll down, I've now got my male faces and I've got my female faces underneath it. We haven't got randomization set up for the female faces, so I'll quickly do that. I'll go into question randomization, advanced randomization. I'll move these 3 trials into the green box here, save it, close. I'll refresh the page, and we should now see that we've got that box indicating that our female block is randomized. Okay, there we go. Okay, now what we might also want to do is randomize the order in which the male and the female blocks are presented to our participants. There's no special reason for female faces to be rated after male faces, and actually you might be concerned that if we always present male faces first, there could be a kind of order effect whereby people are bored by the time they get to the female faces, and so they just rate them less attractive, or they just pay less attention to them, or something like that. So it would be good to randomize these so we can discount that possibility. Okay, so if you want to randomize the order that blocks appear in your survey, you need to go to the survey flow option here. There's a button here at the top, so we'll click on the survey flow, and it'll show us a list of the different blocks we've got in our survey. At the moment, everyone is seeing every block, and they're all seeing them in this order. I want to randomize these 2 blocks, so I'll click on the link for the preceding block, the face info block, and I will choose a randomizer. And now what I can do is I can click on my male faces, on the move link for my male faces block, drag that underneath the randomizer, same for the female faces. And now the participants will see both of these blocks, but they'll see them in a random order. And then once they've seen those two blocks, they will go on and see the debrief block. What you can also do is you can change the number of these blocks that you want to present to people. So say, for example, you've got a control condition and you've got an experimental condition, and you want to randomly allocate your participants to one condition or the other. So this is how you can do it. So you would just change this number to 1. So now every participant does the first 4 blocks, and then they hit the randomizer, and then they're either allocated to the male block or the female block, and then when they've done that, through to the debrief block. All right, now what you can also do, which is also useful sometimes, is you can direct people through your survey in different directions depending on the questions they've answered in previous sections. So to demonstrate that, I'll just move the female block back into the main survey flow, male block 2, and I'll delete this randomizer. And now I will add a branch. Okay, so let's just say I want men to rate the female faces and I want women to rate the male faces. Now I can add a condition. I can say if people answer that they're male in the what is your sex question, they're going to see the female faces. And we'll add a new branch. If people are female, they're going to see the male faces. Okay? So now if people don't answer the male and female question, it's going to get a bit messy. So you might want to go back into your demographics questions and make that what is your sex question a compulsory question. So now you can be sure that people are going to be branched off into either this part of the survey or this part of the survey. So people will go into each branch. That the survey will sort of check if they are supposed to see each branch of the survey, and if they are, they'll see it. If they're not, they'll just go on to the next part of the survey. So women will now see the male faces and then they'll go straight to the debrief. Males will see the female faces and then they'll go through to the debrief. You can also add further conditions. So if you want people to meet multiple criteria, you can do that. You can hit the plus button here, and maybe you can you can also say if you identify as straight, then you can see the male faces. Or maybe you can say if you don't identify as gay or lesbian, okay, that's not selected. So now women who are either heterosexual or bisexual will be shown the male faces. If not, they'll skip this branch of the survey. Okay, I want to have the randomization in here, so I'll just put these blocks back into the main part of the survey, and I'll get rid of these branches. By the way, if you accidentally delete one of your blocks, you can always choose to add a new block here. You can just select to add the female block there. If you've accidentally deleted it, or if you just want to show it multiple times, you can do that. Okay, we'll delete that. I'll add my randomizer back in and move my men and women back in there, and I'll save the flow. Alright, we're almost there now. The last couple of things I want to show you before we launch the survey. I want to show you first how to auto number your questions. So at the moment, what happens with Qualtrics by default is that every time you add a new question in, it gets a new number. And the questions aren't necessarily, well, they won't be in the order in which they appear in the survey. So because we put these female questions in second, see we go from like question 10 here up to question 18, 19, 20, back down to 11, 12. Now this is not a major problem because every question will have its own unique number, but I think it's better for the question numbers to sort of count up in the correct order. Just makes it easier for me to go through my data when I'm finished and be sure I know what's going on. So If you go to auto number questions and choose block numbering, then each block will get its own number, and there'll be a sub number for every item within that block, and they'll all be in the proper order. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you on this page is how to export your survey to Word. Just click there and choose export, and I'll save this on the desktop and open it up. And what this is really useful for is, say you're having to submit your procedure to an ethics body at your university or something. So students at Northumbria have to submit their entire procedure to the ethics body. They need to have all this information in here. So you're not going to want to submit this document as it is, because it's not formatted entirely perfectly. You see here in the survey we've got paragraph breaks in our information sheet, and they've gone here. So you'd want to reformat this before you send it to anyone to read. Also, for questions like this drop down question about what time you want to wake up in the morning, the drop down doesn't appear in the Word document. It's just reformatted into radio buttons, which again isn't so user friendly. So you might want to fix that. But for regular two choice radio questions, that's sort of formatted quite nicely there. So you could just copy and paste that into your procedure document to submit to your ethics body. Same for questions like this one here, that's in a table. So that's formatted quite nicely. Anyway, the other thing that this document is useful for is it shows you the values that are associated with each choice. So when a participant answers this question in your survey and they choose their sex, their result isn't saved in the data file as male or female. It's saved as 1 or 2. Okay, so this document will show you, it'll be sort of like a quick cheat sheet. So if you're looking through your data and you're not sure what an answer of 2 means for the sexuality question, you can look in here and you know it means that the participant identified as gay or lesbian. You can see here for this wake up times question that every time has another number. And when you've got a question like this with loads of options, it can get a bit confusing, because then you're trying to remember that a response of 50 means 12:15. So what you might want to do is recode the values of your variables so they make more sense to you. In morningness, eveningness questionnaires, usually what happens is if people choose a time, say up to 3 in the morning, they're just given a score of 1. And then if they choose, another set of times, they're given a 2, and so forth. So you can always recode this later on in Excel or something, but it's always better to sort this out in Qualtrics first. So then, it's done, it's ready, and you're not in danger of forgetting how all the variables are coded when it comes to looking at your data further down the line. So we'll go back into Qualtrics. We'll scroll down to that question here, and I'll click on the cog for that item, and I'll choose to recode the values, and we get a dialog here that shows all the options. If we choose to check this box for recode values, we can see all the values associated with each of our choices. And then we can change these to whatever we want them to be. So if I want it to be a 1 for every time up until 4, and then a 2 up until 6, and then a 3, I can do that. Okay, we'll close that out. And I think we're ready now to launch our survey. I'll click on the Launch Survey button here, and now we're moved over to the Distribute Survey tab. If you click this link now, then your survey will be activated, and this link here is the one that you want to give to your participants so they're able to participate in your study. Okay, and you can also see here, you can also come back to the Distribute Survey tab at any time to get this link if you forget it, and you can see how long your survey's been running. Okay, so let's say your survey's been running for a period of time, you've collected all the data that you want, and you want to look at the data and download it. To do that, you click on the View Results tab, and Qualtrics will load up all the data for the survey that you're working on. Now at the moment you can see here we've got no results because no one's taken part in this survey yet. So for the purposes of demonstration, I'll just generate some fake test responses. You can get Qualtrics to make you some fake data. It just runs through your experiment randomly a few different times and gives you your data. So you can see here we've got the respondent ID, which is automatically generated, and some other information here. You can see how long it's taken someone to complete the survey as well. We'll download the data, and all these settings you can leave as they are, except I usually change the zip download to unzipped, because unless you've got a huge amount of data, you don't need to save it in a zip format. You can choose to download in different formats. I usually choose to download as CSV format, so I can open in Excel. You can save it straight to SPSS if you want to do that. I've already clicked on here, so Qualtrics is just getting my data file ready, and when it's finished getting the request ready, then it will start to download automatically. It always takes about 30-40 seconds, even if you've hardly got any data, which is the case here, so just have to be a bit patient with this. Okay, the export is complete. I've saved my data, and when I open it up, I can see I've got a row for each participant, and the first few variables, they're automatically generated by Qualtrics, these ones that start with a V. So you get your start date and your end date when people started and ended the experiment, and you'll have the IP address here as well. Which is useful if people have participated in your study multiple times from the same computer. You can look at the IP address and you can see that, and you might want to choose to delete those respondents. For every question, we've got a separate column, the question numbers here, the question text underneath it, and then each participant's response on each row. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. The last thing I want to show you is how to turn the survey off. Okay, so if you go back to distribute survey, what you'll want to do is make sure that once you've got your data, you close the survey. And you'll have to type close here to do that. Probably if you've got ethics approval to run a study, that's time sensitive, so you don't want to leave your study running, collecting data when you no longer have ethics approval to do that, so you probably want to deactivate the survey. But that's everything. Thanks for watching the video. I know this video is super long, but hopefully now you'll be able to run a Qualtrics study on your own without asking for any help. If you do need help, what you can do is you can just Google Qualtrics University and click on this link. And Qualtrics is really good for providing great video tutorials, how to do all the different things you want to do. You can, if you wanted to use, what was it called, like rich content or something I talked about earlier, you could just click in here, you can get a page all about it. So look, video tutorials already made, so there's loads of stuff here. So there you go. Thanks for watching. I'm off to gargle with some salt water because my throat is absolutely wrecking. All right, thanks.